Hey, what's up, Vox and Hops heads? I'm Matt, the focus of Cryptopsy, and you're listening to my podcast, Vox and Hops, brought to you by Sound Talent Media, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians to talk about their lives, music, and craft beer. I hope you guys have had a great weekend. I hope you guys had a chance to sit back, relax, enjoy life, enjoy metal, and enjoy, of course, a few craft beers. I myself did, and I am feeling good. I am feeling rejuvenated, and I am ready to attack this next week. I got a whole bunch of great stuff coming up. Can't wait to talk to you about all the cool things I have coming up in October, because October is on its way, people. Where did September go? I don't know, but it's already finished. Don't forget that this coming Thursday, I have the very first live Thirsty Thursday virtual hang interview. I have invited back Danny Marino, the guitarist of The Agonist, the very first Vox and Hops guest ever to come and be the very first live interview at a Thirsty Thursday. I'm stoked about this. You should be too. If you would like to come, join us 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Times. Send me a message via Vox and Hops' social media, and I will send you the private Zoom link. This is a private event. If you would like to be there, you must be invited. So please send me a message and I will hook you up. This Vox and Hops episode is presented by Heavy Montreal. Heavy Montreal is Montreal's premier metal promoter. They put on a whole bunch of amazing events all year long. All of your favorite bands come through Montreal, and it is Heavy Montreal that is putting on those shows. But not only that, they put on one of North America's best metal festivals. And trust me, people, I have played just about every festival out there, and Heavy Montreal is right up there with the best of them. I cannot wait for this pandemic to be over so that I can go and check out a whole bunch of Heavy Montreal Presents metal shows happening here in Montreal, and we can all hang out together. I am very stoked about today's episode because I am with BLASKO, who has played bass for just about everyone. He's played bass for Danzig. He's played bass for Rob Zombie. He plays bass for Ozzy Osbourne, and he's a part of Zakk Sabbath. Get ready, people. This is Vox and Hops, episode number 186.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm with BLASKO, who has played in amazing bands such as Cryptic Slaughter, Danzig, Rob Zombie. He plays bass for Ozzy Osbourne. He is in Zakk Sabbath, who just dropped a record, Vertigo, a few weeks ago. How are you doing, BLASKO? Let's start with a easy yet complex question. How have you been coping with 2020?
Yeah, I mean, I miss playing live, honestly, like I miss that aspect of it. But I have my own business that it runs from home anyway. So a lot of that hasn't changed in terms of I get up and I go to work in my home office pre-COVID. So not a lot of that is, not a lot of that has changed, other than meetings. Going to meetings have now changed to Zoom meetings. And hey, look, we have to be sort of pliable in this situation to get through it. And hopefully it doesn't last for too much longer, but whatever, we'll figure it out along the way and get through it, so but yeah, coping as good as sort of we can. There's ups and downs, good days and bad days, and frustrating days and accomplished days. So here we are. It could be worse.
It's really hard as an artist staying positive, but I think it's our job as an artist to portray that to all of our fans, that we are okay, that we're staying creative, and encouraging them to feel positivity as well.
Yeah, I think staying positive is necessary, as well as staying creative and trying to find unique and innovative ways to get through this, right? Because it's not like any of us are going to give up. It's not like any of us are like, oh, well, I guess the universe says that I can't do what I've spent my whole life doing. I don't believe that. We just have to figure out new ways to do it. So
absolutely,
that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge.
And it's not like getting to where we got or where you got was easy. So you have that in you, and it's just a matter of us going back and reaching down into our pit and going back into that early stages where we hustled and just keep hustling now. This is the first time that this has happened to anyone.
For sure, no doubt. So, which makes it a little bit easier in some respect, in that we're all in this together and we all have these conversations of knowing that we all have similar sort of feelings of where we're coming from. So you can confide in people and try and, you know, learn along the way, and we can all sort of work together to help ourselves get through this.
And I think as an artist, it's very difficult being home for so long. For someone that's on the road a lot, you're used to seeing your road family, whether it be your crew members or your band members at that. And then just when you go through, for myself with Cryptopsy, when I go through certain cities, I know that I'm going to see this certain person, and it's just sort of become a part of my extended family. So how have you been coping with missing the road life?
Yeah, I mean, it's just an adaptation period. You know, I mean, like I said, well, I've definitely missed that aspect of it. So, you know, but I mean, what can we do? You know, you can't go out and play shows without being canceled. So, I don't want that to happen, and I don't want that to happen to anybody around me. So, you know, whenever it's ready, it's ready, you know, and I think we just have to kind of wait and endure and innovate along the way.
Perfect. Vox&Hops is all about hanging out with my metal friends, talking about their lives, music, and craft beer. Do you have a craft beer on your side, or is it too early for you to just enjoying a nice
It
glass
is
of
way
water?
too early, but I have this very kick-ass liquid death water that looks like it's a beer.
It's super cool.
So I'm seemingly drinking. If I didn't tell you, I could just be like, oh yeah, here's my tall boy or whatever. But no, I'm staying hydrated. It's going to be a hot one today, and you know, I can't get funky before noon.
I appreciate that. On my side, I'm drinking this little special brew. This is from Micobrasserie Pixel from up here in Montreal, Canada. This is their Simpson-inspired beer. All of their brews always have just the best can art, and this just dropped. It's their Springfield Session. This is their Session IPA, clocks in at 4% with lactose. It is super cool. I love what Pixel's all about. Tell me about, do you have a craft beer journey? Are you a craft beer enthusiast, BLASKO?
I'll start with picking up where you left off with that can. So yesterday on Instagram, I saw this Sour Patch IPA reoccurring in my feed for some reason. Well, not for some reason. I mean, like, I like Sour Patch Kids and I like beer. So it's someone licensed Sour Patch Kids and made it an IPA, which I'm scared of on one hand, but intrigued on the other hand. So I don't know if I'll be able to get my hands on one of those, but yeah, if I can, I'm probably going to give it a try, but I'm going to have very low expectations on it. But in terms of craft beer, I'm not well versed. Sometimes it's a little too much information, right? Like for me, but I've been experimenting, and you know, like I said, I don't know a lot. I don't read blogs, or I'm not in chat rooms. Like, I don't care that much. But when I go to the store, like, I'm intrigued by cans, right? Or the marketing and whatnot. So I'll get sucked into that from time to time. I'll tell you what has been a game changer for me is I saw it on Shark Tank, and it's this thing called physics, and it's this bit of a contraption. My explanation of it is terrible, but it's a game changer. Let's just put it that way. But you put a bottle or a can, craft beer, any kind really, but I think craft beer wins in this particular thing. But it turns a can or a bottle into a draft.
Really?
Yeah. So it goes through this system, and you pour it into a glass like you would pull a normal tap, but then you pull it backwards, and it gives it's magnetically gives it that head and that sort of
perfect
draft. Yeah, that sort of draft accompaniment with it, and it's been a game changer. Like for me, it's like, but yeah, they're really hard to get. I think because they're on Shark Tank, it's like every time you go to the site, everything is like sold out. So I don't know, but if you can get your hands on one, I highly recommend it.
That's super, very cool. I had not heard about that. I do love Shark Tank
Yeah,
though. We got to get our
yeah.
fans on Shark Tank, and then we'll be sold out too.
Good idea.
Let's talk a little bit about you, your life growing up in your parents' or guardians' house. What music was playing when you were not in control of the music? What music did your parents or guardians listen to?
They were very much Beatles and Elvis kids. And then like, cause I grew up in when I was a kid, I was would have been the 70s. So, 1 through 10 years old was 70s. Um, and so there was a lot of like folk and stuff like that going on. Some cool stuff, later on. There was a lot of like adult oriented rock, which is like Journey and Foreigner and Styx, like that kind of stuff. So I think inherently there was guitar music, right? Like there was guitar based music in the house, which led me to Kiss, and then Kiss was the gateway into everything else, heavy and rock and Image and all that stuff. So that was the origin story. So my parents weren't totally uncool when it came to music, but they were just sort of their generation. But in hindsight, now that I think about it, it could have gone a myriad of ways, but good that they did actually like guitar music.
Was there ever a band that you brought home that was just too much for them? Do you remember that band?
Well, they were reluctant on getting me my first Kiss record. They were like, well, here's this Peter, Paul and Mary album. I was like, but that's not me, right? Like I want something that like that I resonate with. Like I don't like, even though I may like some of this stuff, like it's not my generation. I don't resonate with it. So I wanted something that was specifically me, and that band was Kiss whenever I was 7.
That's amazing. And so many times on the podcast, I hear Kiss being that gateway band. It's so amazing how many people they have influenced and how they affected the global music scene, and so many genres blew up and grew out of Kiss's either theatrics or the visuals or the everything that they brought. It's just so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, because you figure, their real sort of explosive height might have been like 75 through 77. And at that point, I was 5, 6, 7 years old, right? And so seeing the spectacle of that at that age, I mean, I guess it would scare some people, but to me, I was like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever,
Pure intrigued.
Yes.
I want more.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Take me to your first time that you ever witnessed a show. Do you remember the first show that you went to go see?
Well, the first show that I ever went to go see that I wanted to go see would have been Kiss and Motley Crue. But before that, like I went to like a Sha Na Na concert. I think I saw Joan Baez or whatever. But this was all stuff I was just tagging along with my parents too, right? The first concert that I was ever like, I need to go to this was Kiss on Creatures of the Night tour, and Motley Crue was opening, and they were on the Too Fast for Love.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember that moment? Do you remember standing in that arena, the room?
Yeah,
and
without a doubt. And it was at the Universal Amphitheater. And I thought it was the greatest thing ever. In hindsight, you come to realize that the Universal Amphitheater was like 6,000 capacity room. And I didn't realize that they were sort of on a downturn at that point, because they were usually like an arena band, and Universal Amphitheater was not an arena. And so I didn't think that I realized that it was a down, time for them. To me, it was like the greatest thing I've ever seen, right? They had like the drum riser was like a tank, and like they did all the stuff, they did all the stuff or whatever. But so yeah, I thought it was the greatest moment of my life at that point.
And was it a moment where you were also like, I'm going to do that, I'm going to be on stage one day? Did you already have that in your mind when you went to that concert?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I really kind of think that I was still young enough to not really understand that they had a skill that someone could attain. I think I just thought they were aliens dropped from the sky and they just appeared, in front of me. I don't really know that was a skill that I thought that I could possess
It
at that
wasn't
point.
an obtainable goal.
No, like I don't think so.
Take me to your first time on stage. Do you remember your first show?
Well, they were like backyard parties and smaller kind of stuff. Trying to think the very, very first time. I just think it was like a backyard party, so it's like not really all that terribly exciting, or like a talent show, or like some small thing that where it's like I don't know that in those types of instances, like you really feel the energy, right? Like if you're just playing to like friends and family, it's like not real. Like you have to get a room full of people that you've never met before in a different city to just be like, wow, this is like a real thing. Like there's real energy here. But I think the first time that happened was Cryptic Slaughter, and we did some backyard party, VFW hall, kind of makeshift gigs or whatever. But I think the first gig that I really remember was opening for Discharge at the Fender's Ballroom in Long Beach, California. That to me kind of feels like the first gig, because it was like a bunch of bands with records, with record deals. It was like us and Excel and Final Conflict, I think Attitude Adjustment, like all real bands, and then Discharge was headlining, and that's like super real band from a different country, and yeah, it was like their shitty record, whatever. But once again, still to me, like I don't even know that I put that in much perspective. Like, I can say like the first gig that I remember being a real gig was, opening for Discharge. And then like that's when it felt kind of like real, where there's a packed room full of people that are doing a slam hit to your music, like that's whenever you first kind of just go like, wow, this is an energy I've never felt before.
It's amazing. It's probably why we keep doing it, having that
For sure.
hair on our arms, raising adrenaline reciprocation between an audience and a band while we play shows, which is something that I'm missing dearly right now. But when I do these interviews, I sort of get that sort of vibe right before it starts, right before we start a conversation. I always get a little bit of that same energy as to when I'm going to jump on stage. That fills my void for that. How have you been filling your void, getting that itch scratched during this pandemic?
Man, I think just putting my head down and going to work every day, like, you really, there's this thing that you can't explain, that beyond not being able to explain the feeling of that adrenaline and energy that you get from playing live. But there's something else of whenever you're living in that tour bubble, where it's you and your friends in a bus or a van, like close proximity to one another, and you're just like on a pirate ship, and you're just going from city to city. And there's something to be said about that type of adrenaline and energy that is specific to this little bubble that you're living in. And I don't know, maybe some of it is ego, of just this, but it's just this feeling of being sort of indestructible, right? And like untouchable, because it's like everywhere that you go, people are showing up to see you and what you do and your art, and then you get filled with that adrenaline from them on a nightly basis, and you kind of carry that over weeks at a time, and then the energy sort of resonates like on the bus after the show, and sort of talking about it, and if it was good or if it was bad, or how were merch sales and all this stuff. And so I think that there's one thing that is definitely a gaping void, is that sort of unexplainable feeling of living in that bubble. Whereas like, you know, now it's like clean the cat box, and, you know, coming into reality of grocery shopping and cat boxing and working, you know, like it's like, that's definitely something that you miss, that you can't explain to anyone other than someone like us. You know what I'm talking about. Someone that hasn't done what we do, you sound like a total asshole trying to explain that.
It's a very you know, we are very lucky to do what we do. It is a beautiful thing, and I can't wait to start doing it again. And but only when it's safe. That for myself, that's really something that I've been talking about a lot on the podcast, that I want to wait. I don't want to go and just start playing gigs, and that's my personal belief. So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about bands that are going out and playing now?
Well, I don't think that's a very smart idea, because it's like, it just drives a lot of negative press. Just because people are willing to show up doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And certainly you don't want to be attached to anyone getting sick, let alone that getting to where someone passes away. You know, you definitely don't want to potentially put yourself on the ringer for something like that. That's a big weight of responsibility that you can avoid, right? But I mean, look, I mean, there's a lot of things that can be done in this time. If you're a band, you can definitely write and rewrite music. You can put a lot of criticism and spotlight and not feel rushed to really go like, well, whenever we come out of this, we better have our best music ever, because it wasn't like we weren't afforded the time to really craft something unique, like of a high magnitude of quality. And then I think that there's the option to live stream a show and really connect with your audience, like on a bunch of different ways, whether it's a show or whether it's connecting podcast, Twitch, live stream. I think the live stream shows is really positive. Like I feel like being able to engage with your audience on that level, and if you're fortunate enough to be able to pull one of those together, I've had a lot of success and seen a lot of success from both sides of that, whether I'm creating one or whether I'm just watching one. I feel that's a cool thing that potentially we could carry on into the next wave whenever we come back. I think that it's something that we could really supplement touring with, and really be able to reach fans everywhere that maybe don't have an opportunity to see you for whatever reason. So I think that's a cool thing that bands have been doing. And now we're at the point now where we're all trying to outdo one another, which I think is a really healthy competitiveness, right? To where you've got Corey Taylor now kind of setting the new bar of like from the forum, and pitching and selling you on the most exciting pyro induced arena show that you can get. So I appreciate all of that, right? I appreciate the fact that we're all trying to outdo each other, because in that instance, the only people that win, or the main people that win, are the fans, right? So it's good. Like you can't just pop open your laptop and acoustic from the couch. I mean, you can if you want, and that's what your fan base wants. But in terms of the value of what it sort of, it's limitless as to what can happen now. So I think that's kind of exciting. It's exciting to me.
It's super amazing, and I love it. And Behemoth did a sick live stream a few
Sick.
weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was so good, and they're right up there with with Corey as well. And I think it's very interesting too that bands being from all across the globe, we can't go and steal each other's crew either. So it has to be all local crews that need to one up each other, which is even more of a
Mhm.
challenge. And I don't think live streams are going anywhere. I think that they're even going to stick around after the pandemic. And I honestly believe, and I've said on the podcast a few times, they are going to start being included in record deals.
Interesting. Yeah, could be.
If
Could
there's a
be.
way to monetize it, record companies are going to want their fingers in that for sure.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
they better come to the table with some production, because you can't just put your hand in the cookie jar without giving us the cookie jar, so
Yes, please. Yes.
yeah.
Well, they did it with digital, but
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about your management. Can we talk about that? I think it's super interesting.
Yeah.
Tell me about how this all started. How did you end up managing other bands? You manage a bunch of great bands such as Clutch. How did you get into the world of becoming a band manager?
Well, a little bit out of necessity, but mostly just for the love of rock and roll. Um, like I'm a hired, transparently, like I'm a hired gun bass player, my whole life. Like I've never written a hit song.
Hmm.
Like I get paid to show up, right? But there's no residual checks, right? Like if like I've got no piece of an Ozzy record,
Hmm.
like I've got no piece of a Rob Zombie record, right? And like I'm not bitter about it. I'm just saying, like I'm not a writer. That's not my contribution to the world of music, right? Like I show up and I kick ass and I make the dude's name on the ticket. Like I make that dude look as badass as possible. And that's my job. And it's been my job for a long time. Um, and I'm not bummed about it, but I don't write. Like there's no kicking back and waiting for the royalty checks to roll in for me. So as I was getting older and realistic about it, I'm like, well, I don't know that I can be a hired gun bass player guy for the rest of my life, right? Like I don't know if there's enough gigs around there. Like I've been very fortunate to have a super kick-ass gigs
You played with everyone.
and never having to play some shit music just to pay the bills, right? I've never had to do that, and I'm very fortunate, and I do not take that for granted. But I'm also realistic in that at some point, that train ride might come to an end, and if it does, then what am I going to do? So, but I knew that I love music and I want to be in music, and how can I continue to be in music without actually playing music? So I thought of managing bands. It's a flexible situation that doesn't require me to be in an office. And I've been, I know a lot of people and have been around. So sort of logically, I thought like it could be something good. Like I could have something to contribute to bands, and I could elevate careers and whatnot. Like at least, in my mind, I thought that it was a logical transition of something that when music being a musician does end for me, I can, comfortably just transition into that. So that's why I started it way in advance, because it's not like you can just go like, I'm a manager and bills are paid. That's not how it works. So I knew it was going to take some time to build up a roster and a clientele and everything. And that's what I did. I mean, I've been managing for like 15 years now or something. And I've got a pretty sick roster now that I'm stoked with, and hope to build that, obviously over time. But at present, this is what I do primarily, and I'm stoked about it. Yeah, but yeah, that's kind of the origin story.
That's amazing. Were you always that guy that was always involved in the business in all the bands that you played in, or was interested in it?
No, I mean, always like I think there's one thing that I know about me is I was the one dude that was always the most motivated, right? That was in a band. Like even from early on, like I was always the dude's like, we got to get gear, we got to rehearse, we got to do this. And like I was the one putting together the deals to record a demo, or, you know, whatever. I wasn't necessarily the business guy, but I was always the most motivated guy, right? I was always the most enthusiastic guy. And, you know, the majority of people that I was in a band with early on have fallen off, like even you know, or they just didn't pursue it. It wasn't something that they wanted to do. Whereas Cryptic Slaughter, I think, is a pretty good example of, I was really the only one that was kind of really motivated to really play music afterwards, you know, like the other guys. I mean, and granted, we were so young, right? So when the band kind of disbanded and broke up, it was like we were all graduating high school. So it makes sense that you're like, well, we can't live at our parents' house forever and think that playing heavy metal punk rock music is going to pay the bills, right? Which in hindsight, I guess in some ways it could have, but it just didn't seem like it at the time, you know, because we had put out 3 records, and when you figure that Metallica had put out 3 records and Slayer had put out 3 records, we weren't there, right? Like we didn't have that trajectory. So it was like, okay, cool. Well, this all feels like over, and people had other interest in what they wanted to do. And I only wanted to play music, and I only wanted to be that guy. But even bands before that, like, you know, that none of those people play music anymore. And there was even guys that I was in bands after the fact, like none of them play music anymore. And you know, I get it. Real life takes over. It's not a realistic thing for everybody. But so I think, no, so the answer to the question is, I wasn't always the business guy, but I was definitely always the most sort of motivated, enthusiastic guy. And that probably is the characteristic that I was like, I got to figure something out. And I was like, I can manage, fuck it. You know, or like I can at least try, you know,
Fake it till you make it.
I at least know that I can try to do this and stuff. And yeah, so here we are.
Who would have been that first artist that you convinced as you were starting this out?
Well, the first real band was In This Moment.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
And they, at the time, had a demo on MySpace, like a 3-song demo on MySpace. And they had done a little bit of touring, like on their own. But man, they were super hot, like, you know, on MySpace, and people were digging them. But like, there was, when I came in, you know, there was no labels and interest or anything. And I remember shopping them and getting a lot of sort of very hostile passes, like not even like a polite pass, but like this band is bullshit kind of pass. And I was like, wow, all right, well, I totally disagree. And clearly I was right.
Yes, you were.
But yeah, and then that the In This Moment led to Black Veil Brides, that led to Zakk, that led to what else? Led to High on Fire, you know, led to Clutch, and whatnot, and a few other things, you know, along the way. But yeah, but that's been the thing that I've been doing. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, it's all about word of mouth and being consistent and putting the work in there. Do you think that bands need a manager now in 2020 in the new world of the music industry?
You don't need a manager to build a fan base. You know, a lot of what I get is like, we could be so much bigger if we could get our stuff out there, which is not a true statement. It's like, there's nothing about what, I mean, and I think that In This Moment and Black Veil Brides are a very good model in terms of, you know, those bands didn't have a manager to record music. They didn't have a manager to make a music video. They didn't have a manager to build a fan base on social media. You know, they didn't have a manager to help them write songs. They didn't have a manager to name their band and give them a logo and, you know, like all of that. Like they did all of that on their own because they were super motivated and they grinded, you know, out like on social media, and they had a vision for what they wanted to do. And at that point that it became out of control and they knew that they could get a record deal, but they had no way of knowing how to navigate that without totally getting hosed, right? And signing away their life. You know, at that point they needed one. So does a band need a manager? No, not early on. You need a manager at the point to where you feel like it's gone beyond your pay grade, right? To where you go like, I know that we're nearing the next level and I know that I know nothing about that. You know, that's whenever. But early on, it's like, you know, like a manager isn't going to come in and give you fans. Like you have to put in the work to put yourself out there. And there's a little bit of, you know, luck and timing that are involved with that. You know, it's not an exact science, because if it was, someone would have that equation that they would sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, for somewhere, and they'd be fucking on vacation right now. But yeah, it's so yes and no. I mean, I'd even stand to reason that at some point now, even like a bigger band maybe doesn't need a manager now that they've been through it, right? And maybe they're lucky enough to have got their masters back, and they, you know, they're not in debt anywhere. There's no outstanding advances. They know, like, I think Devil Driver is a good example of, like, Dez is a very smart guy. He's been around the block. He went through, you know, a handful of managers along the way. And then at some point, he just wakes up and goes like, I know as much as anybody else. Like, I don't need people to tell me what to do. He's like, I'm going to manage my own band, and I'm going to start my own management company. And that's what he did. And so I think that he's a good example of someone to where you go like, and, you know, Devil Driver is a legitimate brand and have been around and for quite a while. And he's like, I know the business enough to where it's like, I don't need to break off someone a piece. Especially, it's like whenever you consider, you know, bands like us, right, that are in this heavy metal world, it's like we're not Post Malone, right? We're not going to get a Bud Light endorsement. We're not going to get a Doritos endorsement, right? We're barely even going to get played on the radio, like real radio, right? So it's like you figure, it's like, what do you even really need a manager for? Like, what about your business do you feel that you don't know enough of that you need someone to come in and do? Which is maybe a good example of someone that goes like, I think I know the bulk of it, but maybe there's this one aspect of it that I don't know. Maybe I just need to hire someone just to take care of that part of the business. Or maybe it's more of a consultancy than it is like a management situation, you know? But, you know, I think now we're entering in a world where it's open-ended. And in the management situation, I think, is a case-by-case basis in terms of what someone might or might not need.
Absolutely, but you have to have a guy in the band or in the team that can take those responsibilities on. Sometimes bands are just creative genius, but they can't speak to people. We all know a band like that.
That's true too. And you know, that's a band that does need a manager to have that role, just to be the guy that sort of can connect the dots between all the team members as well as the band members, and have one core of communication so that everything filters in all the right places, you know.
Absolutely. I have to give you a massive shout out. When I started thinking of doing Vox&Hops, I was listening to the Managemental podcast quite a bit. Talk to me a little bit about podcasting. That podcast is on hiatus right now. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Mike and I are super friendly and talk all the time. and we want to try and resurrect it. It's a matter of just kind of putting our schedules, back in. And also too, I think we want to like think of another angle of how to do it so that it's maybe a little bit more engaging, or just to like, it's like if we're going to spend the time to do it, like maybe there's a different angle that we can approach with it. So we've thrown around a few ideas, but I love podcasting, and at the time that we were doing it, it feels like it wasn't as hot as it is now. Like it was definitely bubbling, it was definitely hot, but you didn't have Joe Rogan getting a fucking multi-million-dollar deal with, Spotify. Like it wasn't, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't that hot. But certainly necessary. And it's a very good brand extension. I liked communicating with him on a weekly basis, just for nothing else, of just kind of catching up and throwing ideas around and seeing how someone else, thinks about our business. And I thought it was productive, in hindsight. I mean, you listened to it, so, you tell me, like, was it something that you got a lot out of? How could it be better, right? How could it be different?
Exactly.
Or was it good, or was it good as it was? I don't know.
I think it was good as it was. For myself, some of the episodes were aimed at younger bands. So those episodes didn't really necessarily speak to me. But the ones of, talking about managers and getting record deals, it was a very, very interesting listen. And I think it was okay the way it was. Maybe you guys can pull out, start doing some video too. And that's more engaging now. It would be something I would suggest.
Yeah, totally. Yes, things have changed. I did another one too called A New Level. That's was
right.
a one season thing. And that was a little sort of solo project, if you will. And I felt really good about that. I really felt good about how that got done. I'm not tuning myself on the patting myself on the back about it or anything, but if talking about podcasting, like I felt like I really enjoyed the process of doing that, and I'm happy with how it came out. And like I might do that again. I don't know. I mean, at this point now, if Mike and I do something again, we'll figure that out. I think that could be cool. But right now I'm in the headspace of like thinking about doing something on Twitch. I'm not really sure what that is, but I'm thinking of it being sort of more of a hang and like a DJ thing, sort of bringing sort of my musical taste and whatnot. Cause like I've got like playlists, and I had a show on, what was it? Give me radio.
Give me metal or give me radio.
Right. For a while and stuff. So I'm intrigued. I'm currently intrigued by the Twitch platform. And
it's people are doing really well on Twitch. If you can connect with people.
And personally, it's like I'm not even necessarily thinking that like I would make any money at it. I think it's just kind of like, I think maybe that's the next level of sort of brand extension for me, is to kind of be on there and having more of a hang, like a hangout kind of place where we just play music, and they kind of like a situation like this, right?
Very cool.
But so yeah, I don't know. That's just something I've been thinking about as of late.
Very cool. Let's switch gears back into craft beer. If you could have a BLASKO craft beer, what would it be called, and what style of beer would it be?
Yeah, wow. Well, okay, so in terms of craft beer, because I guess we kind of bounced past that real quick. I'm definitely not into sour beers. Not a fan.
Hence why you're afraid of the Sour Patch IPA.
Yeah. Some IPAs, right, are okay. I mean, I think that I like the idea of the craft style, in that like independent brewers and independent canning. Like I think I like the whole idea of sort of like this little like microcosm of fans of beer, but they're creating their own little environment. Like I like that aspect of it, like little coffee companies, and I just like the idea of these like little companies that just have their own angle to it, right? Like I really like that aspect of it. But I'm not like, I'm not too well versed in it. Like, I'm sure, like, if I mentioned Stone Brewery, people are like, poser.
No, they're one of the predecessors. They
Yeah,
set the game for the whole Californian scene.
yeah. But I don't know. I honestly, I haven't put much thought into that of what it would be. I'd have to get back to you on that. I'm probably heavy metal related or cat related, maybe
Yes.
mixing of the two. Not really sure, but something in there. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. One last question while I finish off this Springfield session from Micobrasserie Pixel, which I picked up at La Canette, which is one of my favorite craft beer stores here in Villeray, Montreal. Got to give them a shout out. I love them so much. It probably never happens to you because you're very organized and you know how to take care of yourself. But every once in a while, it happens to everyone. So, what is your hangover cure?
Oh wow. So interesting. There was, I kind of like lost count because it wasn't something, it was where it wasn't like a getting sober kind of thing, right? But it was like a very much thing of like I can't at this age, like a hangover is detrimental. Like it's almost like giving it's almost like giving yourself the flu, right? And I was like this is dumb, right? Like I want to be an adult drinker. Like to me, like I feel like a hangover, like I associate that with like a college student or something, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm like I run a business, like, you know, like I'm in a fucking huge band. Like I don't want to be the hangover guy. So I was like, I don't need to quit drinking because I'm an adult and I can drink like an adult. But I was like, but I don't want to be hungover. So like I quit hangovers years ago. Like I was
brilliant.
like, I'm quitting hangovers. That's what I'm doing. And so at that point, my palate changed because it wasn't about killing a case of Coors Light, right? Like so at that point, craft beer and tequila became more of an interest to me because it's like I'm not drinking 20 of anything. I'm drinking like one or two, right? So the quality and the craftsmanship into the beer or tequila or rum or whatever, that became more important to me because I was like, it's quality over quantity now versus quantity over quality, you know? And so my cure for the hangover is to quit them.
Brilliant.
Whilst not quitting drinking. So I've just my palate has just adapted, but my brain and body and everything about it thanks me because I've kept everything in check and I haven't been hungover in years, but yet haven't needed to, you know, quit having fun.
That is awesome. First time anyone has ever said that. Quitting hangovers. I love it. That's great. I think I'm going to start quitting hangovers.
Yeah.
And it's true. We got to stay sharp. And it is true that it's like giving yourself the flu and it kills your muscle. It kills your hustle game. If ever I do feel hungover, it's like all of that motivation. It takes me a few days to pick it back up and to get back onto the hustle train, which is so important when we you know, we're an extreme musician and doing stuff on our own. That's great.
Yeah. It just destroys the day, and I don't have that kind of time. Like I don't have disposable days.
I love it. BLASKO, thank you so much for taking the time, sitting down with me, having a chat, drinking your liquid death water while I enjoy this Springfield session from Micobrasserie Pixel. Cheers. Thank you so much. It was a great chat.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. What a great chat with BLASKO. What a true legend. What a great dude. I love chatting to people in the music business. It is something that really, really interests me. And I can assure you guys that there will be a few more guests in that line of work coming up in the future because it is something that I want to talk about. I also loved his hangover cure. He quit hangovers. Trust me, since I've done this interview, it is something that has been resonating with me, kicking around in the back of my mind, enjoying craft beer, enjoying life, but being an adult about it and just not being hungover, because you can do that and you can enjoy life and still be responsible about that. And it is something that I suggest all of you should think about in the upcoming days. Just let that thought circle in your mind, because it has been circling in mine. If you've enjoyed this episode, you should absolutely subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform of choice. I have over 180 excellent episodes that you should go back and listen to. Don't forget that Vox&Hops is brought to you by Sound Talent Media. I have one more episode coming at you this Friday, but until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox&Hops hits.